35 of the collection Gitanjali by Rabindranath Tagore, for which he was awarded Nobel Prize in Literature in year 1913. In this poem, where the mind is without fear, the poet Rabindranath Tagore, he visualizes freedom for his people and for his country. At that point of time in history, around year 1910 to 13, India was colonized by Britishers. It was a colony where a very tiny minority or population of Britishers who had arrived in India and subjugated millions of Indians. Indians were subjugated, colonized, and ruthlessly they were suppressed. There were many internal weaknesses also which had weakened them, and due to which they could not put up a brave or a successful resistance against oppression unleashed by Britishers. So in this poem, Rabindranath Tagore, in year 1900 and around 10 and 13, he visualizes freedom for his people. But one thing which is very remarkable here is that he does not make any political references in an explicit manner. He does not talk about Britishers or any political government. Rather, he wants freedom for his people. He assigns some qualities, some features of a utopian world which he has visualized for his people. So let's see this poem, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. It means where we are not afraid, where the people are not afraid of anything. That is, it could be, they are not afraid of anything. The government or the social system, or there is nothing which instills fear in them. They live their life without fear, and the head is held high. That is, the head here symbolizes their dignity, their respect. So they have basic dignity with them. They do not live their life in an undignified manner. So they live their life. Rabindranath Tagore here says that he's talking about a utopian world where people are free from any fear and where they have a dignified way of life. They are not subjugated, they are not repressed, they are not humiliated by anything. And then we can interpret it here that they are not humiliated by either foreign rule, by colonial rule, or by anything. The next line is where knowledge is free. That is, knowledge is free. See, in ancient times, or there have been times in history where some people have not been allowed to have access to education. So here Rabindranath Tagore wants that knowledge must be free. People should have access to education, to knowledge. And there should be nothing which should be acting as an obstacle in the path of people when they pursue education or knowledge. And knowledge here has a wider connotation. Knowledge does not mean just school or college degrees, but knowledge is something which makes people powerful. We have often heard that knowledge is power. So knowledge is something which liberates people, which increases their capacity to think, which makes them powerful, which opens new doors and windows for them. So that knowledge must be free. Everyone should have access to that knowledge. There should not be any government which should create obstacles in the path of that gaining that knowledge. That is, neither the government nor any social system or any social group should tell that who can study and who cannot. Also, when we say knowledge is free, it can also mean that the knowledge is not polluted, the knowledge is not corrupted. There is not any segment of political control over the knowledge or social control over the knowledge. Knowledge is true and it freely flows without any being corrupted because of any propaganda or anything else. Next line is where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. It means that Rabindranath Tagore visualizes a world which is universal and which is unified, where people are not fighting with each other on the basis of their narrow identities, their parochial identities. When Britishers arrived in India, they were very less in numbers, but still they could colonize a population which was far much more in numbers than them, and they could retain their power over them for a very long time because of the people, the colonies, they were fighting with each other. They were not having a single identity for themselves. They were fighting with each other on the pretext of, say, region, north versus south or east versus people of one region were fighting with other regions. They were princes. India was divided into more than 500 princely states, even when Britishers were ruling us. So Rabindranath Tagore visualizes that we should not be broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. And here narrow domestic walls could mean anything. It could be any such concept which divides people and puts up one group of people against the others. It could be the concept of insiders versus outsiders. It could be the concept of a caste or a race or geography or anything which divides people on some basis. So he wants a world which is united. So here we do see some attributes of universalism here, where the words come out from the depth of truth. So it means where the truth is being spoken, where people speak truth. And this is, we can hear in for that he could be talking about the population, where people speak truth, people don't lie, they are having a virtuous life, they're not corrupt. There should not be any difference between what they think and what they speak. They should be true. And the second thing is that that truth, even the government is speaking truth, even the political system, they are truthful, they are not making any dishonest claims or promises. Even they are true to what they boast or what they claim to profess. Next line is where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection. It means Tagore also wants the people of our country to be very hardworking, and so much hardworking that tireless. Tireless means without getting tired. Striving means they're trying very hard. Stretches its arms towards perfection. That is, whatever our noble goals are, our worthy goals are, we should be trying very hard to get to that place, that perfection, that utopia, that whatever we want, we should keep moving towards that. We should not stop unless we achieve that goal. Where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit. Now see, clear stream of reason. Now our ability to think has been compared here to a stream, like a small river. Now Tagore here uses this metaphor of a river, and he means that this river should go on and on. It should not be lost in a desert. It should not fall short of its mission. It should not be terminated, or it should not be misguided. That is, it should not lose its way. It should not be hijacked. It should not become dead in a desert. And what is the desert of? The desert, what that desert comprises of? The desert of dead habit. That is, those habits, those aspects of activity which are unproductive, which are not leading us anywhere. So he says that our ability to think rationally, our ability to differentiate between right and wrong, between truth and falsehood, that ability to reason, that is like a river, and that river should not be lost into a desert of dead habits. Now, the dead habits could be Could be anything. We can maybe we can infer the dead habits could be being too much orthodox. It could be our resistance to change. It could be our obsession with what we have already been doing. So all those things which stop or act as an obstacle in our ability to think, which reduces our farsightedness, which make us myopic. All Tagore wants freedom from all those dead habits. He wants that our ability to think clearly should go on. It should not lose its way into a dreary desert sand of dead habits. Next line he says, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action. Now, so far, Tagore has been making, it's like a prayer where he is praying before God, we can think of like God, and where now he says to God that we want that the land where you guide our mind forward, that is you act as a guide to our mind, you promote us, you motivate us to think beyond. Our mental capacities must increase. You must lead us forward. You should lead us forward into ever widening thought and action. See, here he was saying that we must not be divided on the basis of narrow domestic walls. So opposite of this narrow is widening. He wants our thought process to widen, to break down those boundaries which we construct before us, which make us myopic. And we must be able to think beyond. We must be able to think beyond our immediate circumstances. We must be able to think beyond our immediate people, our immediate surroundings, our immediate times. We must have the capacity to think far into the future, far beyond our geographies, far beyond our weaknesses and strengths of our present times. And that is the freedom which Tagore wants. So he says, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action. And not only we be just thinking in a free manner, we must also be able to convert that thought into action. So here the word action is also very important here, where he says that you, God, you lead us. You should lead us forward. You should lead our mind forward so that we can think beyond, we can think in a broad manner, and we can also act accordingly. So here so far we have seen of the dream which Rabindranath Tagore has seen for his people. A place where people are not having any fear, where knowledge is free, where the world is universal, where the world people are not divided on some basis, on any narrow identities, where everyone is speaking truth, where people are working very hard to achieve our goals, where our ability to think is not reduced or lost because of our obsessions with anything, where our mind is free and our mind is encouraged by God to become more broad, and we turn that into action also. So in all that dreamful place, that's like a dream, that's like a heaven, he says, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. So here he says that, let my country awake. When he says country, this gives us an impression that yes, he is indeed talking about his own people. Yes, he's talking about the country which has been subjugated as a colony by the colonial powers coming from Britain. So this poem is indeed a great inspiration for all those people who want to do something good for their country. And this poem is beyond time and space. You can find its relevance not only in a particular country like India. You can find its relevance in any country, and you can find its relevance even in those countries which have not been colonized, because Tagore has not made any explicit references to a colonial rule, though we do get impressions that he has been raising his people. He has been invoking in them the spirit to think free. Obviously, that freedom to think in a free manner cannot come in a colonized setup. But nevertheless, his idea of freedom does not stop at making his country politically free. He also wants that movement to go further, and that does not really matter that who governs the country, whether it's the outsiders or the insiders, whether it's the colonial rule or the native rule, but whosoever rules, basically people should be free. So this is the dream which he is seen for, and this is a dream which has inspired generations of people, irrespective of the place where they're coming from. So the central idea of this poem is where the mind is without fear. Basically, Tagore visualizes freedom for his people. He wants freedom, and that freedom can come only when mind is free. So here we see different aspects of freedom. Whenever you have to write about what you think about freedom, you can definitely take inspirations and ideas from this wonderful poem. So this was the British rule. This is like a snapshot of the British rule, where Indians were subjugated by a handful of Britishers, and that happens in most of the colonial rules. It used to be like that. But this poem, as I said, is not just talking about colonial or freedom from a colonial power, but rather it's talking about freedom in a broad sense, and it's more of a mental freedom, where the mind must be free. It should be able to think beyond its immediate circumstances. It should be able to think beyond the needs and aspirations of its immediate people. It should not be parochial. It should not be narrow. It should be broadened. It should not be obsessed with what has happened in the present or in the past. It should be free. So this is here, and before we end, let's have one more reading of this poem, this wonderful poem, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where the knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where the words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom. My Father, let my country awake. Into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. Beautiful poem. So, thanks for watching here. Close this video now.